Now, Labour have not promised anything on legal immigration at all, but they need to be aware that if net migration figures are anywhere near what they've been in the last few years, confidence in their party will fall further.
Labour erupts in Parliament after Nigel Farage confronts Keir Starmer and David Lammy at PMQS. You're not going to believe what just happened in Parliament today. Because during Prime Minister's questions, a session that's usually tense but predictable, Nigel Farage walked in and completely changed the atmosphere. Within minutes, the Labour benches were in uproar. David Lammy was visibly furious, Keir Starmer was caught off guard, and Farage? He looked calm, almost amused. This wasn't just politics, it was drama unfolding live on national television. It was meant to be a normal Wednesday in the Commons, the usual back and forth between government and opposition. Keir Starmer stood up to press the Prime Minister on the economy. David Lammy sat close by, ready to add his voice. But before the session could even settle, Nigel Farage, now a political commentator turned parliamentary disruptor, found his moment. Farage had been invited to the gallery for what was supposed to be a routine observation. But of course, nothing is routine when Nigel Farage is in the room. At one point, he was asked by a reporter just outside the chamber what he thought of Labour's performance lately. And his response: "It's like watching two men argue over who lost the map. Neither of them knows where Britain's headed anymore." That clip spread online before Starmer even finished his sentence inside Parliament. Minutes later, things escalated inside the Commons. Farage was mentioned directly in a question from a backbench Conservative MP, who sarcastically asked, "Does the Leader of the Opposition agree with Mr. Farage's statement that Labour's position on immigration is, quote, all talk, no action?" The timing couldn't have been worse for Starmer. He turned toward the Speaker, visibly irritated, and tried to brush it off. "I'm not here to comment on Mr. Farage's latest publicity stunt." But that dismissive tone only gave Farage more fuel. Because moments later, cameras caught him shaking his head, smirking and mouthing something that, from the lip reader's angle, looked a lot like, "That's exactly the problem." David Lammy noticed. And that's when it happened. Labour's composure cracked. Lammy leaned forward, gestured toward the gallery, and said sharply, "If Mr. Farage has something to say about policy, perhaps he should stand for Parliament instead of shouting from the sidelines." The Speaker immediately called for order, but it was too late. The exchange had gone viral within minutes. Farage's team released a statement to GB News just after, saying, "If standing up for common sense makes the Labour front bench uncomfortable, then maybe it's time they listen to the people for once." That single line, "listen to the people," became the soundbite of the day. By the afternoon, social media was a battlefield. Hashtags like #PMQS Showdown, #Lammy vs. Farage, and #Starmer embarrassed were trending across X and TikTok. One post read, "Nigel Farage didn't even need a seat in Parliament to dominate PMQs." Another fired back, "Lammy did what Starmer wouldn't, he stood up to Farage. That's leadership." And as usual, political commentators were split. Some praised Starmer for keeping his cool. Others said his avoidance made him look weak, especially in contrast to Lammy's emotional response. But behind the scenes, the tension ran deeper than what the cameras showed. Labour insiders told the Telegraph that Starmer was irritated by Lammy's spontaneous reaction, fearing it played into Farage's hands. One aide reportedly said, "Farage thrives on emotion. The moment Lammy rose to his bait, he won the optics battle." Another source close to Lammy countered, "David said what millions of people were thinking. Someone had to say it." And that's the political reality right now, the Farage effect. Even without holding office, his ability to dominate conversation is unmatched. He doesn't need power, he just needs attention. And every time Labour reacts, he gets exactly that. Still, there's a deeper story here. What's really worrying Labour is that Farage's rhetoric about disconnection, frustration, and political elitism is resonating with parts of the working-class vote Labour once owned. You see, Farage knows how to strike nerves. When he says, "Labour's forgotten its roots," it sounds populist, but it's also strategically targeted. And moments like this one in Parliament remind everyone that he can still set the national agenda without ever taking a seat. By evening, the fallout continued. Talk shows ran heated debates. Was Lammy right to confront him? Should Starmer have defended his deputy more strongly? And is Farage once again creeping back into mainstream politics one viral moment at a time? One commentator on LBC summed it up perfectly. Farage may not be in Parliament, but Parliament is still reacting to him. That's influence most politicians would kill for. Meanwhile, Starmer tried to move on. Later that night, he gave a short interview saying, "We're focused on governing, not on personalities. I'm not concerned with Nigel Farage's theatrics." But you could tell, the headlines weren't helping. Because by then, every major outlet BBC, Sky, GB News, and even international media was running the same clip of Lammy's outburst. And every replay made Labour look more shaken than composed. And here's the irony for all the chaos. Farage never actually spoke inside Parliament. He didn't need to. A smirk, a comment from the gallery, and the reaction from the Labour frontbench were enough to steal the show. This is what Farage does best: provoke, perform, and dominate the conversation. But here's the question no one can quite answer. Did he expose Labour's weakness or just their humanity? Because let's be honest, the public loves real emotion. They're tired of scripted answers and careful lines. And when Lammy erupted, for a moment, it felt like passion instead of politics. So where does this leave everyone? Starmer's trying to project stability, but moments like this chip away at his calm image. Lammy's seen as fiery, outspoken, and now unpredictable. And Farage? He's sitting on the sidelines, smiling, knowing full well that once again, he managed to turn a simple question into the biggest headline of the week. This was more than a PMQS clash, it was a snapshot of Britain's political mood. Frustrated, divided, electrified. And as one journalist put it last night, if this is just a preview of what's coming before the next election, Britain hasn't seen anything yet. Because one thing's certain, the tension inside Parliament is rising. The players are losing patience. And Nigel Farage somehow keeps finding new ways to make them all react. And the question tonight is simple. If this was just one afternoon at PMQs, what happens next time, when the cameras are rolling and the stakes are even higher? Because something tells me this story isn't over yet.